Morning, we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, chapter 3, text 23. Daivadineshu kameshu Daivadina svayam puman Ko vishrambeta yogena Yogeshvara manuvrataha Svayam, himself. Puman, living entity. Ka, whoever. Vishrambeta, can have faith in. Yogina, by devotional service. Yogeshwaram, the Supreme Lord. Anuvrataha, serving. Translation. Every living entity is controlled by a supernatural force, and thus his sense enjoyment is also under the control of that supernatural force. No one, therefore, can put his faith in Lord Krishna's transcendental sense activities, but one who has become a devotee of the Lord by rendering devotional service. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, no one can understand the transcendental birth and activities of the Lord. The same fact is herein corroborated. No one but one who is enlightened by the devotional service of the Lord can understand the difference between the Lord's activities and those of others who are controlled by the supernatural force. The sense enjoyment of all animals, men and demigods within the purview of the material universe is controlled by the supernatural force called the Prakriti or Daivi Maya. No one is independent in obtaining sense enjoyment, and everyone in this material world is after sense enjoyment. Persons who are themselves under the control of supernatural power cannot believe that Lord Krishna is not under any control beyond himself in the matter of sense enjoyment. They cannot understand that his senses are transcendental. In the Brahma Samhita, the Lord's senses are described as omnipotent. That is, with any sense he can perform the activities of the other senses. One who has limited senses cannot believe that the Lord can eat by his transcendental power of hearing and can perform the act of sex life simply by seeing. The controlled living entity cannot even dream of such sense activities in his conditional life. But simply by the activities of Bhakti Yoga, he can understand that the Lord and his activities are always transcendental. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:55, Bhaktyamam abhijanati javan chasmi tatpataha. One cannot know even a fraction of the activities of the Lord if he is not a pure devotee of the Lord. Daividenshu kameshu daiva dina svayam pumam ko vishrambeta yogena yogeshwara manuvrata. Every living entity is controlled by a supernatural force, and thus his sense enjoyment is also under the control of that supernatural force. No one therefore can put his faith in Lord Krishna's transcendent sense activities, but one who has become a devotee of the Lord by rendering devotional service. So very emphasized here is the position of Krishna's transcendental sense activities and the difference between Krishna's transcendental sense activities. These words are added, of course. Krishna's sense activities. No, Krishna's transcendental sense activities. We have sense activities. Of course, our sense activities can also be transcendental if our senses and mind, intellect, everything is dovetailed in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I always remember that story of the Vice-Chancellor of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, that when the Vice-Chancellor of Varanasi University went to visit Mayapur, and he wanted to see, he'd heard about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he wanted to see him, and when he arrived he asked the devotees to be able to see him, so they took him and he asked some questions, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, I think that you can ask the devotees. You can ask the priests, the pujaris, you can ask those questions to them. And so the Vice Chancellor replied that no, these are very intricate questions about the Vedas and Vedanta and so on. They won't be able to answer these types of questions. No, go and ask them. They'll be able to answer. So the Chancellor was a little humble, so all right, so I'll go there. And in the meantime, when he went there, they said, oh yes, so we're a little bit busy now. We have to polish the Lord's paraphernalia and do them different services. Maybe you could help us. In the meantime, then we'll gladly answer your question. So he did it, and he was helping to polish the paraphernalia and do so many services in the deity room, just for the Lord's paraphernalia. So then after a while, he just left and went back to see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta asked him, so were all your questions answered? And the Chancellor replied, well, when I was doing the seva, all the answers to the questions came to my own mind. I somehow or other, I got the answers to my questions. And that was at that time Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, yes, my Guru Maharaj, he always used to quote, Atha Sri Krishna Namadi Damba Bandraya Indriya, Sevan Mukha Hidivara Swayameva Spuratida. When the senses are used in service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the senses become purified, the mind becomes purified, the intelligence becomes purified by the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And then when in that purified condition, one, by the mercy of the Lord, is able to understand all sorts of transcendental subject matters, even those things that appear very complicated and intricate. They are revealed to one with the pure heart. So it's very important to understand. And of course, in Krishna, and so no one can understand Krishna, and especially Krishna's transcendental mind and intellect and senses, his body, his activities, all these things, no one can understand, because as mentioned here, they are under Daivadina Shukami, they are under the Daiva Prakriti. And actually Krishna, I think this verse may be referred to here, that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Naham Prakasa Savasya Yogamaya Shamavita Mudo Jam Namajani Lokamam Ajamaviyam. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, my Yoga Maya. So very interestingly, this Yoga Maya, this internal potency, this Prakriti, because Prakriti is in two phases. Prakriti is the Mahamaya. So it is said the conditioned souls are covered by Mahamaya, and Hiranyena Patrena. Actually in the Sri Ishopanishad is mentioned there are two aspects to the covering of the living entity, how they cannot actually perceive the personality of Godhead. One is that they're under the laws of material nature, which is supplying all the necessities of life. So everyone is after sense enjoyment. This point is emphasized here. Everyone is after sense enjoyment, but that sense enjoyment is provided by nature. Here it is actually, this word is used, supernatural force. It is nature, ultimately it is supernatural, it is Daivi, it is a spiritual energy. It is called material, but because it is moving in different phases and temporally shows different phases and so on and so forth. But ultimately it comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore it is Daiva, supernatural. It's not just natural, it's supernatural. And a very interesting use of that word, supernatural. Prabhupada could have used just natural force, but supernatural is connecting it to Krishna. The natural force is not in of itself, by itself, controlling. Because some think like that, well, nature, some think that I am controlling everything, by my activities things are happening. Others think, well, all right, but there is nature, there is so many things happening out of so nature is controlling. And then they stop there. But here, the supernatural means beyond, nature is connected. It is the Yogamaya, there's Mahamaya and there's Yogamaya, the internal potency, who is under, and Krishna says, and he says that Yogamaya is under me. So the living entities are dependent on the supernatural force for their enjoyment. So they don't know anything but that. They're under that. So they're covered by that. They can't know anything beyond that. So this is one type of covering. Another type of covering is that those who take up the spiritual path, perhaps those who want to meditate on Brahman, and this is very much mentioned Hiranmaya in the Patrina, that another type of covering is the Brahman effulgence covering. This is another type of covering. You get the Prakriti covering, material nature covering, covering the perception of the living entity, conditioned soul, and then you get the Brahman covering, those who want to elevate themselves to Brahman, see the effulgence. There's different versions of this. There's the darkness, the void. Some want to merge in the void, the darkness. There are those types of impersonalists, and then there are those who want to go to Brahman. So these are both covered because the effulgence or the darkness also covers the form of the Lord. It is like a veil. So this is mentioned. This is mentioned in the Sri Upanishad in the purports there in regard to the covering. So just like so there's a level of a covering of effulgence or darkness, and then there's another level again where some may accept the form of the Lord, just like in some religions they pray God is great, but they don't know exactly who God is. And so they accept the form, they accept that there is a God, some sort of person, but they cannot, just like in Islam, it is considered the greatest offence to give a name or a personality or depict God in a deity form, and that's why we have in history, especially in India, where the Muslim Mughal invaders would come and they would especially like to break the deity, smash the deities. This is an offence. God is great. How he can be just an ordinary person, how he can be in a statue. This is the greatest offence. Who was that famous Hindu hater? Aurangzeb? Yeah, when he went to, we saw all the temples there in Vrindavan. He had them smashed, and some of them, and he actually gave the direction, put them in the road. You know, when you make the roads and the tar, smash the deities and put, so we walk on them as well. This is the greatest offence, to, make God like an ordinary man. An ordinary man, you call him God, or the statue, you call him God. So they consider that's an offence. So they can't actually understand. They're also on another level of not understanding the personality of Godhead, actually, in a very specific way. In a very specific way. And I was just in Brisbane over the weekend, and I was giving a class, also from the third canto, but a little later on, about the process of meditation for those who are following, especially the yoga path. The process of meditation is given very specifically. One may start with Ashtanga yoga and go up, and very specifically it is mentioned how to do the meditation on the Supreme Lord if one wants to understand the Lord as a person, because it's very difficult, as mentioned, as I already mentioned, the conditioned soul, and we were reading in one purport that the conditioned soul, the conditioned soul's mind and heart is covered with a huge mountain of dirt. This is the description Prabhupada gave. A huge mountain of dirt which is made up of many layers of many lifetimes of desires to lord it over in different bodies. So sometimes the living entity is in the pig's body and he's thinking, I'm a pig, I've got to do this and then he's in a dog's body, now I'm a dog, I've got to do this and this. And now I'm a monkey, now I've got to do, I'm an elephant, I've got to do this. Then they're all thinking. So this conditioning is causing a layer over the mind and a layer over the heart that is like a huge mountain of dirt that's impossible to move. You cannot, it's become, layer after layer, it's become hard. Impossible to break it down. This is the position of the conditioned soul, and this is mentioned here. Someone who's under the purview of this supernatural force can hardly understand the unlimited, infinite position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're amazed just by a little bit of rain around the area coming down hard over here. What to speak of, and this is just a small little area, what to speak of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now, in order to overcome this Prabhupada actually mentioned that in order to overcome this mountain of dirt, the yogi is advised to meditate on the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of God. And actually the process of the yoga, especially for those who are coming up from the material life or from the impersonal path, they're taking up the path of understanding God as a person, they're advised to start with the lotus feet, then gradually work up to the different limbs of the Supreme Lord. And very interesting, Prabhupada explained that these descriptions and this process it's very specific, and the description is very specific. Now, starting with the lotus feet, the explanation was given. Why the lotus feet? Why not start with the nose or the ear? Of course, I make a little joke about it, but there's actually a few reasons in regard to the lotus feet. What is the meaning of worshipping the lotus feet? First of all, the lotus feet. First of all, the beauty of every aspect of the body of the Supreme Personality of God, it is perfection, the highest perfection. Every part of the body of the Lord, whether the chest, there's many descriptions, the chest, the waist, the neck, the beautiful moon-like face, the beautiful hair, the teeth, the lips, the eyes, the ears, everything. The lotus feet are very brilliant. Krishna's lotus feet are very, very attractive. They're very brilliant. They're effulgent. Now, the yogi is advised to meditate on the form of the Lord, especially in reverence, the Lord in Vaikuntha, especially. Now, there's a description there of the color of the Lord in Vaikuntha, various descriptions, but this one description is that Lord is the hue of the linseed flower. That particular section. Now, I've heard of linseed oil, so I looked up linseed flower because when we were young, we were all playing cricket and things like that. Depending on country, we would use linseed oil. The bat was made from wood, so if you left it to dry out, it cracked. So you used it. So we all knew what linseed oil was, but I never saw the linseed flower. So the linseed flower is actually a whitish purple or blue, a whitish blue, purpley kind of color. So that is given as a description. So now, why all these specific descriptions? Now, also description of the dhoti of the Lord, what he wears. Now, because all this is meant to fix the mind on a form, a specific form, and to put to rest the need or the feeling to think of something imaginary. This is a tendency. Just like sometimes people go to the yoga for meditation in the yoga school. Okay, you have to meditate. Someone was telling me before they went to the yoga school, and their meditation was they had the teacher presented concentric circles. And then you have to meditate on the outer one, and then you go in and you go in and you go in, and and then you really focus in, and that's your meditation. Well, it may feel good, but so that's kind of an imaginary thing, just a made-up kind of thing. I don't know where they get that. Or meditate on the tree, meditate on the sky, meditate on this. These are imaginary. So very specific directions are given for those who are in the yoga to meditate and to meditate on each limb of the Lord. So going back to the lotus feet, one thing is actually Krishna's lotus feet, Lord Vishnu's lotus feet. They're very, very beautiful. This is an attraction to the lotus feet. That's one thing. Another thing is that when you offer obeisances to the lotus feet of anyone or to the feet of anyone, especially if you bow down and put your head there, Prabhupada once described that you are completely surrendering to that person in a very vulnerable position. Because if you put your head at someone's feet, you're risking that person may not be so reciprocal to you and could actually kick you in the head. So your head is the most vulnerable part. So that shows submission. That shows respect. And so therefore it's advised we bow down, and we bow down to the feet. One can ask, well, why not bow down to the hand? Well, all right, and so you bow down to the hand. You could possibly get a backhander or something like that. But it's not as dangerous as getting a kick to the head. So it shows someone who is willing to take that risk and surrender them. So that's another, and it's meant to offer respect in the most humble way. So that's another significance of lotus feet, offering obeisances to the lotus feet. We'll come down, pay obeisances to the lotus feet. I always remember when I was just coming to the temple, I brought a friend who brought his girlfriend, and then we stayed through the program. So when we were driving up, I said, so what do you think? And the guy said, my friend said, well, I said, nice food, everything like that. And the girlfriend said, yeah, well, everything was nice, but all this bowing down, she said, bowing down, every couple of minutes, bowing down, bowing down. It's too much, it's too much. It seems a little unnatural. So yes, it is unnatural. One thing is that, we're pretty puffed up. We don't, even if we don't realise it, we're very self-conscious and self-serving type of individuals. So, to more or less a degree, we've got a lot of pride to us. So, even though it doesn't seem natural, it's good to get into that bowing down. That's one thing. So, that's another aspect. The respect, the humility, the actual beauty, the respect and the humility. And one other aspect is that now, in the particular section we were reading, it is referred to that the yogi should meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord, just as Lakshmi Devi was serving the lotus feet of the Lord. We should meditate in that mood. So we know one of the 9 processes of devotional service is Shmaranam, Kirtanam, Padasevanam. And who is famous for the Padasevanam? Lakshmi Devi. She's actually massaging the lotus feet of the Lord, massaging his lotus feet, massaging his thighs. She's massaging, and she's doing that in a mood of service. So she's very famous for serving the Lord. So the yogi is advised to meditate on Lakshmi Devi's mood in serving the lotus feet. So this is another aspect of the lotus feet. Why the lotus feet? It's service, and many acharyas have explained surrendering to the lotus feet means surrendering to rendering service to the Supreme Lord. So this is one aspect, and this is actually explained because of this instruction that the yogi should meditate and have the attitude of Lakshmi Devi massaging the Lord's feet. So service, and we know tadvidi pranipati pariprashanena sevaya. You want to know the truth, just surrender to the spiritual master, inquire for him submissively, and render service unto him. So this service is the constitutional position of the living entity. We're all servants. Either we're serving Krishna or we're serving the material world in so many different forms and aspects. So it's our constitutional position. Prabhupada describes, that's like water. Its constitutional position is liquid. It always wants to be liquid. You can heat it up and it becomes steam. You can freeze it, becomes ice. But actually, even it becomes steam, it's always trying to again become liquid. So the constitutional position of the living entity is to be serving. So if you're not serving Krishna, you're going to be serving something else. And serving something else, material energy, serving whatever, that is far from the level of serving Krishna. So these are all points here. No one is independent. Everyone is dependent upon so many aspects in the material world. The Prabhupada says here, the controlled living entity cannot even dream of such sense activities in conditioned life. What sense activities? The activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These activities. So unless one is unless one is favoured by the Lord, and Prabhupada quotes this, Bhaktya Mama Bijanati Javan Chasmi Tattva Tatomam Tattvato Gyata Vishadetat Anantaram. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. So, in many places, Bhaktya Tvananaya Sakya Tesham Sadadajuktanam Bhajatam Pritipo. There are many verses where Krishna emphasizes this point. So, to understand Krishna, one has to be faithful. To understand any person really, you can know of them, or maybe you don't even know of them, but maybe you know of them. But to really understand them, you have to go into their intimate association. So how do you get into their intimate association? That if that person likes you, I'm just using a mundane example, if that person likes you, then they'll invite you into their association. And then when you go into their association, then you can understand a little bit more about that particular individual, because you're always in their association. But of course, Krishna is even on another level again, because he has so many activities with so many individuals in so many places. Even you're with Krishna in his association, you know of some of his activities, you can never know them completely. In that sense, even for a liberated devotee, even for a pure devotee, Krishna's activities, his appearances and so on and so forth are very mysterious. Because you know one small aspect of Krishna's activities. Just like even on the mundane level, someone, you can be in the association, but that person has other friends as well that maybe you're not privy to, maybe you didn't even know about. And they have other friends, so they act with them, and sometimes they act completely differently with them, and then they do with you. And you didn't even know about those friends. Oh, I didn't know such and such had those friends. Oh, really? And then sometimes you may get an opportunity to go and be with those friends with your mutual friend, and you see that he or she acts differently with those friends than with me. So Krishna has unlimited, Lord Vishnu, unlimited relationships and unlimited activities. So to even understand just a little bit about Krishna, it's not possible from the material level. It's not possible even from the Brahman level. It's covered. Naham Prakasa Savat Yogamaya Shamavita. Krishna says, I am, for those who are unintelligent, that's all of us, we're unintelligent. I always remember when I was first coming to the temple, there was a puppet show on, and they had these puppets in a little. This was quite popular back in the day. They had these puppet shows on. So it was about Prahlad Maharaj, and he was at school. There was a lot of puppets, and he was at school and he was addressing all his school friends, and he said that, my dear unintelligent demoniac friends, and whoever was the devotee had said that, and that includes all you here. And I was kind of thinking, well, what is he talking about us? I was just becoming a devotee. Well, I'm an unintelligent demoniac person. But in one sense, if someone's not they're very materialistic, unintelligent. No matter, you're unintelligent because you're engaged in materialistic activity. So everyone's in that category. Really, although one can be intelligent on the mundane level. You know how to make a bridge or a skyscraper building, you're very academic, super intelligent on that level, but spiritually speaking, you're considered unintelligent because you don't understand that beyond these temporary activities, there's something much bigger, much greater. You're not even beginning that. So therefore, you're considered unintelligent. So this is unfortunate position, especially in Kali Yuga. Everyone is conditioned, and as far as spiritual life, in one section of the Bhagavatam, it's described that for the materialistic persons, spiritual life is just like a dot on the horizon. Just like a dot on the, you can't even be looking there on the horizon, and maybe you'll see a dot. Maybe you'll see a dot over there somewhere. Maybe. And even if you see it, what are you going to know about it? It's just a dot. And so in the material world, people are just living their lives, they're just so caught up. They have to conform in so many ways because of their work, because of their relationships. They're totally, you know, and you know, you get locked in. Your childhood, you're locked in by your parents and the school and everything like that, and then you grow up and you know, then you have your friends, and then you go to work, you're locked in by that, then you may become married, you have your... So everyone's kind of locked in. You know, you make a choice to pursue a particular career, and then you go into that. Then you're kind of pretty much locked into that. So it's very much a controlled situation. Although foolishly, everyone's thinking, "Oh, I'm you know, got free to do so many things." Your freedom is very minuscule, but you know, because we're free, actually spiritually, we're thinking in that way. So it's kind of natural, but it's misplaced. So. Therefore, one needs to be enlightened, and it's mentioned in this verse today. Unless one is enlightened, what does it say? One who is enlightened by the devotional service of the Lord. Unless one is enlightened, so one needs to have. It's like we're in the darkness, and one needs to have a light turned on in his head. True devotional service, through the mercy of the Supreme. Then the light comes on. Then you can start to see things in reality, actually how they are. So this verse is very nicely explaining that the position of conditioned souls, how they. And another point that is made here, that the Lord's senses are omnipotent. Now, it is a very amazing thing that the yogis are encouraged to meditate on the different, rising from the lotus feet to the calves, to the knees, to the thighs, to the waist, to the stomach, to the navel, to the chest, to the neck, to the lotus face, like that, moving up and up and up, going up and up. But so I just forgot my point. But now all those parts of the body of the Lord, any one of them can do the activity of the other one, or all of them together. And Prabhupada actually mentions here, just like the Lord can hear and eat just by hearing, so, or he can perform the act of sex life simply by seeing. We know that the Karanaksha Vishnu, he impregnates the whole material creation with living entities just by glancing. And he impregnates the Mahatattva just by glancing at it. So just by glancing at it, he impregnates. So in that sense you could understand the Lord just by seeing the act of impregnation or sex life is done by the Supreme Lord, just by seeing. And just by hearing the mantras and the prayers offered by the devotees and offering foodstuffs to the Lord, he can taste it. You know, how has he tasted it? By that mantra. He has tasted it. By hearing it. So there's another important point. Such is the position of the Supreme Lord, an incredible position. All right, I'll stop there and I'll read it again if anyone has any question or comment. Every living entity is controlled by a supernatural force, and thus his sense enjoyment is also under the control of that supernatural force. No one therefore can put his faith in Lord Krishna's transcendent sense activities but one who has become a devotee of Lord by rendering devotional service. So does anyone have any question or comment? Yeah, that speaker unfortunately is not working, right? No, okay.
And not that I'm glorifying God doing. He wrote a very interesting song called "You've Got to Serve Somebody." And with your permission, I'll read that to you. It's very interesting. Maybe an ambassador to England or France. You may like to gamble, you might like to dance. You may be the heavyweight champion of the world. You might be a socialite with a long string of pearls. You're going to have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, you're going to have to serve somebody. Or it may be the devil, or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. Many, many, many
serve somebody. Yeah, well, he had that understanding, didn't he? That's a proper understanding. Yeah. You had some association with Krishna consciousness through George Harrison, I think, and also, but I think he's mainly become a Christian now.
Yes.
Yeah, and but anyway, the Christians have that understanding of serving the Supreme Lord. So yeah, either that or serving the material energy. Yeah. So that's the correct understanding. Very good. Any other comment? Yes.
Well, we were talking before about people that have advanced material knowledge, doctors, engineers, and lawyers. And so it was interesting the other day, we were talking about there's kind of more or less forms of knowledge as arts.
As what?
Arts.
Hearts.
Yeah, different arts.
Oh.
The art of the war, the art of engineering, the art of medicine.
Oh, art, A-R-T.
Yeah,
Oh.
Yeah, and then he says above that is
Yeah, that's described in many places. These are considered not Vedic as such, as Vidya. All these are technical, medicine, art. They're not, study of Vedanta, which is considered actual knowledge as far as transcendental knowledge. All these are corollary, all these are on a lower level of knowledge. Yeah, so they're all categorized as arts. Yeah, the arts and sciences. I mean, even they're called like that, arts and sciences. But I mean, real knowledge is the Veda Vidya, Vedanta Sutra. This type of level. That's actually, according to the Vedic understanding, that's the level that's considered actual knowledge.
You mentioned the Supreme Lord impregnating the material nature with living entities. And I just wanted to ask, so do the living entities actually get cast into the material nature, or as I've read somewhere, as Srimad Bhagavatam mentions, it's as if the living entities fell asleep, like when it falls down into the material world. It's as if the living entity falls asleep and just dreams of these things. So,
The living entity dreams that he's
it's probably dreams of the material life. So it's the dream of Mahavishnu on one hand, whatever is happening in the universe. But it's as if the living entity is sleeping. So
the living entity, there's different aspects to, your question begs kind of different understandings. The living entity is at the end of the day of Brahma in this universe, because, in the Mahatattva, before the universes, there is the Karanaksha Vishnu, the Mahavishnu, who's lying on the great causal ocean. And then from him come all the universes floating out. It's described in the Brahma Samhita. They're floating out on the causal ocean and in clusters, just like foam. And then he glances in and impregnates the living entities in those universes. He further expands himself in those universes as Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So at the end of they come from the body of the Mahavishnu, so they're like in a sleeping state. And there are those who are at the end of the whole universal manifestation go back, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, who goes back into Mahavishnu. So they're like in a sleeping state in the Mahavishnu, and then they come out again in Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And then from Garbhodaksha Vishnu, they're impregnated through the lotus flower into Lord Brahma, and then Lord Brahma. So all these types of stages are described in the Bhagavatam, Brahma Samhita. So yes, in one sense here the living entities are in a sleeping state when they're not in particular bodies active in the material world. They're kept in a suspended state, like a sleeping state, both at the beginning with the Mahavishnu and after each wind-up of the universes, they're kept there. And then with Garbhodaksha Vishnu, they're kept there. So both levels, they're sleeping. in the yoga nidra of Mahavishnu that you mentioned, that's another, it's like he's dreaming, but he's fully conscious of what's going on. And he's just relaxing and everything is going on automatically in that sense. Did that answer your question? All right, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.